We see a child in a bright costume, holding a bag filled with candy, laughing on a suburban street. We see the cheerful glow of a carved pumpkin on a doorstep. This is our Halloween, a night of harmless fun, make-believe, and sweet treats. But this modern celebration is a mask. Beneath it lies a much older, darker face. Its ancestor was not a night of fun, but a time of profound fear and sacred duty. It was a night when the wall between our world and another crumbled to dust. A night when the dead did not knock politely for candy. They walked freely among the living. To understand our smiling pumpkins, we must first understand their world and the terrifying belief that gave birth to it all. Our journey begins long before the modern world, in a time before the countries we know had names. Picture the lands that would one day be called Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. This is a world draped in mist and shadow. Immense, ancient forests cover the landscape, so thick that sunlight struggles to touch the ground. The air is cool and damp, heavy with the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves. Rivers wind like silver serpents through rolling green hills, and stone circles, erected by even older hands, stand silent watch over the land. This was not just a place to live. It was a living, breathing entity, and its people understood that deeply. Imagine being a person in this world. Your life is woven directly into the fabric of the land. You rise with the sun, and your work is dictated by the seasons. Your home is a roundhouse made of wood, earth, and thatch, smoke from a central fire curling towards the sky. You know the language of the birds, the meaning of the wind, and the secrets of the forest paths. But you also know fear. You know the deep, profound darkness that falls when the sun disappears. You know that the rustle of leaves might not be the wind, and the strange light flickering over the bog is not a reflection of the moon. The people who lived here are often called the Celts. But this was not one unified empire with a single king. They were a vast collection of tribes, spread across Europe, bound together not by a central government, but by a shared language, a warrior culture, and most importantly, a powerful spiritual view of the world. They did not see a separation between the physical and the spiritual. To them, every part of their existence was sacred. The act of forging a sword, planting a seed, or giving birth was a conversation with the gods. Their beliefs were not a part of their life, they were the very air they breathed. To understand their world, we must first forget our own understanding of time. For us, time is a straight line, moving from a past we can't change to a future we can't see. For the ancient Celts, time was a circle. It was a great, repeating wheel. There was no true beginning and no final end, only endless cycles of light and dark, summer and winter, life and death and rebirth. The turning of this great wheel was the most important story of all, and their entire lives were dedicated to honoring its rhythm and ensuring that it never, ever stopped turning. Their festivals were the key points in this cycle. This cyclical worldview was mirrored in everything they saw. The sun rose and set, the moon waxed and waned, the tides came in and out, the seasons turned from the vibrant life of summer to the deep sleep of winter, and back again. This pattern of renewal was proof that life was not a brief spark that ended in nothingness. They believed that death was not an ending, but merely a doorway. It was a transition from one state of being to another, a journey to a different place before eventually returning to the world of the living. This belief shaped their relationship with both life and the mysterious realm that lay beyond it. In this world, humanity was not the master of nature. They were simply one part of a much larger living whole. The ancient forests were not just collections of trees. They were the homes of powerful spirits. The rivers were not just bodies of water. They were goddesses with their own moods and desires. Even the stones themselves were believed to hold an ancient consciousness. To build a home, you might ask permission of the land. To cross a river, you might leave an offering for its spirit. To live in this world was to be in a constant, respectful dialogue with the immense spiritual forces that surrounded you in every direction. This belief in a world alive with spirits created a very different kind of existence. It meant you were never truly alone. A walk through the woods was a journey through a crowded watching place. This could be a source of great comfort. The spirits of your ancestors were never far away, and the gods of the land could offer protection and guidance. But it was also a source of constant caution. Not all spirits were friendly. Some were mischievous, others were dangerous, and all demanded respect. To anger a spirit of the land could bring ruin upon your family or your entire village through failed crops, sickness, or worse. Central to this entire belief system was the idea of the other world. This was not a heaven in the sky or a hell deep underground. It was a parallel dimension, a spiritual reality that existed alongside our own, hidden from us by a thin veil. It was a place of eternal youth, beauty, and magic, where the laws of time and physics did not apply. It was the home of the gods, the spirits, and the ancestors. And while it was usually invisible, the ancient Celts believed that the veil separating our worlds was not always stable. In certain places, and at certain times, it could wear thin. Places where the veil was thin were considered incredibly sacred and dangerous. These were in-between places: the seashore, where the land meets the sea; the riverbank, where water meets the earth; a misty forest edge, where the known world meets the unknown. These were thresholds, doorways to the otherworld. People would go to these places to seek wisdom, to communicate with the spirits, or to perform powerful rituals. But they did so with immense care, because to step across that threshold without preparation was to risk becoming lost forever, trapped between the worlds. It was a boundary that was to be respected above all others. The inhabitants of this other world were not gentle angels or cartoon fairies. They were known by many names, but are often referred to as the Eos Sea, or the people of the mounds. They were believed to be the descendants of the ancient gods of the land, who had retreated into the other world when humans came. They were powerful, proud, and often indifferent to human concerns. They could be generous, blessing a family with good fortune, but they could also be terrifyingly cruel if offended. They were the original inhabitants of the land, and they never let humanity forget who held the true power. For a person living in ancient Celtic society, the presence of the Asai was a constant reality. If a cow suddenly went dry, it was believed the people of the mounds had taken its milk. If a child wandered off and returned days later with no memory of where they had been, it was said they had been taken to a fairy feast. These were not just stories told for entertainment. They were explanations for the unexplainable events of daily life. They served as a constant reminder to stay on good terms with these powerful, unseen neighbors who lived just beyond the veil of ordinary sight. The spiritual guides of the Celtic tribes were the Druids. They were far more than just priests. They were the judges, the healers, the astronomers, and the keepers of the tribe's history and sacred knowledge. They spent decades in training, memorizing thousands of poems, laws, and stories. As their traditions were entirely oral, they did not write their sacred knowledge down. The Druids were the intermediaries between the human world and the otherworld. They knew the secrets of the land, the will of the gods, and most importantly, they knew how to navigate the sacred moments when the two worlds came closest together. The Celtic year, this great wheel of time, was divided into two equal halves, a light half and a dark half. The beginning of the light half was marked by the festival of Beltane around the 1st of May. This was a celebration of life, sun, and fertility. It was a time of great joy, when cattle were driven between two large bonfires to be purified and blessed before being sent to their summer pastures. It marked the triumphant return of the sun's power, the greening of the earth, and the promise of a bountiful summer. It was a time of optimism and growth. But every light has its shadow. Opposite Beltane on the Great Wheel of the Year was the other major turning point. This was the festival that marked the end of the light half and the beginning of the dark half. It was called Samhain, pronounced Samhain. This word meant summer's end. It was the most important, powerful, and dangerous night of the entire year. While Beltane was about life and growth, Samhain was about death, darkness, and the remembrance of ancestors. It was the moment the sun's power finally died and the world was surrendered to the cold grip of winter. The timing of Samhain was not random. It was tied directly to the rhythms of the agricultural world. This was the time of the final harvest. All the crops had been brought in from the fields. It was also the time when the herds were brought back from their summer pastures. The animals that were not strong enough to survive the winter were slaughtered, their meat preserved for the long, cold months ahead. This act of slaughter was a stark and necessary reminder of death's role in the cycle of life. The very survival of the tribe depended on it. Imagine the feeling in a village as Samhain approached. The days are growing noticeably shorter. A chill is in the air that wasn't there a few weeks before. The vibrant green of summer has faded to the gold and brown of autumn. The work of the harvest is frantic and exhausting, a race against the coming frost. There is a sense of urgency, of closure. The year's work is done. The community is gathering its resources, preparing to turn inward, to face the coming darkness together. This wasn't just a date on a calendar. It was a physical and emotional shift that everyone could feel in their bones. Samhain was the Celtic New Year. But unlike our modern New Year's Eve, filled with noise and celebration, Samhain was a much more somber and profound affair. It was a moment that did not truly belong to the old year or the new one. It was a time that existed outside of ordinary time. And because it was an in-between time, the ancient Celts believed it was the one night of the year when the veil to the otherworld became so thin that it practically dissolved. It was the night when the gates between the worlds were thrown wide open. This belief was the absolute heart of Samhain. For this one night, the spirits of the otherworld, the AOCZ, and the ghosts of all the people who had died that year could walk freely in the world of the living. It was a night of cosmic chaos, when the normal rules of reality were suspended. The past, present, and future became one. This was not just a metaphor. For the people who lived then, this was a literal, terrifying, and awe-inspiring truth. The world would be filled with supernatural beings, and humanity had to navigate this incredibly dangerous night with care and respect. The spirits of one's own ancestors were an important part of this night. Samhain was a time to honor and remember the dead. It was believed that the ghosts of family members would return to their old homes, seeking warmth and hospitality. A place would be set for them at the dinner table. Food and drink would be left out as offerings. This was a way of maintaining the sacred bond between the living and the dead, ensuring that the ancestors still felt welcome and respected. It was a comfort to feel their presence, but it also came with a sense of solemn duty. However, not all the spirits that crossed over were friendly ancestors. The otherworld was also home to beings that were malevolent, or simply mischievous. These spirits might sour the milk, cause travelers to become lost, or play cruel tricks on the unsuspecting. Because the veil was open, the world was temporarily returned to a state of primal chaos. It was a time of immense spiritual danger. A person who wandered alone on the night of Samhain was taking a great risk, for they might encounter a spirit that could harm them or even steal their soul and carry it back to the other world. To protect themselves and their communities from these wandering spirits, the people relied on the power of fire. Fire was seen as a representation of the sun, a sacred element that could purify, cleanse, and ward off evil. On the night of Samhain, all the hearth fires in the village would be extinguished. This symbolized the death of the old year and plunged the community into a profound and unsettling darkness. The entire world, for a time, would be given over to the cold and the spirits that roamed within it. The only light came from the moon and the stars. Then, the Druids would light a great, sacred bonfire. This was the central act of the Samhain festival. This was not a small campfire. It was an enormous blaze, often built on a prominent hilltop so it could be seen for miles around. This fire was a beacon of life and order in the midst of the night's chaos. It was a magical barrier, a circle of sacred light that held the darkness and its dangerous inhabitants at bay. The fire represented the community's hope and their determination to survive the coming winter, a promise that the sun, though weakened, would eventually be reborn. The flames of the sacred bonfire were believed to hold immense power. The community would gather around it, their faces illuminated by the flickering light. They would make offerings to the gods and the spirits, often sacrificing a portion of the harvest or some of the animals that had been slaughtered. These sacrifices were a form of payment, a respectful acknowledgement of the power of the other world. It was a plea for protection through the dark months and a request for the land to be fertile when the light returned in the spring. It was a sacred bargain struck with the unseen world. From this one central, sacred fire, a torch would be lit for every family in the community. The head of each household would carry this new flame back to their home. They would use it to relight their own hearth, which had been cold and dark. This act symbolized the renewal of life and the restoration of order within the home and the community. The fire from the Druids' bonfire brought its protective and purifying power into each individual dwelling, ensuring the family was safe from malevolent spirits for the rest of the dangerous night. It was a powerful ritual of unity and shared survival. The darkness of Samhain was not just physical. It was also a time for divination, for trying to see into the future. Because the veil between worlds was open and time itself was fluid, it was believed to be the best night of the year to gain insight into what was to come. People would practice various forms of fortune-telling, often using nuts or apples, things associated with the harvest. They would seek answers to important questions. Who would they marry? Would they have a prosperous year? Would they survive the coming winter? The answers were sought from the spirits who had access to this knowledge. The feeling of this night would have been a strange mix of fear and celebration. There was the very real terror of the supernatural, the knowledge that powerful and dangerous beings were walking just outside the circle of firelight. But there was also a sense of community and release. The hard work of the year was over. The tribe was together, sharing food, telling stories, and honoring the great cycle of life and death. It was a party on the edge of the abyss, a necessary and defiant celebration in the face of the encroaching darkness of winter. One of the most curious practices associated with Samhain was the act of mumming, or guising. This involved people wearing costumes and masks, often made from animal skins or heads. They would go from house to house, reciting verses or performing short plays in exchange for food. The purpose of these disguises was deeply symbolic. By wearing a mask, a person was believed to take on the spirit of the being they were representing. More importantly, it was a way to confuse the real spirits that were roaming the night. If you looked like one of them, perhaps they would pass you by without causing harm. This tradition of dressing up was not for entertainment. It was a form of spiritual camouflage. In a world where the lines between human and spirit were blurred for one night, the best way to stay safe was to blur them yourself. A person wearing a mask was no longer just themselves. They were temporarily an in-between being, able to move more safely through the chaotic landscape of Samhain. It was a way of hiding in plain sight from the powerful forces that had been unleashed upon the world, a clever trick played on the residents of the Otherworld. The gods of the Celts were not distant, perfect beings who lived in a far-off heaven. They were deeply tied to the land and the people. They had complex personalities, with virtues and flaws, much like humans. They were gods of the rivers, the mountains, the hunt, and the harvest. They could be allies and protectors, but they could also be fearsome and demanding. The stories about them, the myths, were not just entertainment. They were sacred histories that explained the workings of the world, and the tribe's place within the great cosmic order. They were the instruction manual for life. The stories of these gods and heroes were not written in books. They were carried in the memories of the bards and druids. They were told around the fire on long winter nights, passed down from one generation to the next. For a child growing up in this world, these were not fairy tales. They were the history of their people and the reality of their universe. Hearing these tales was how you learned about courage, loyalty, and the dangerous beauty of the Otherworld. It was how you learned the names of the powers that shaped your existence. Among the many powerful beings in the Celtic pantheon, some were particularly associated with the themes of Samhain, darkness, death, and sovereignty. These were not evil figures in the way we might think of them today. They were simply forces of nature, representing the necessary and often frightening parts of the life cycle. They were the gods of the dark half of the year, and on Samhain, their power was at its absolute peak. To understand the deepest meaning of this night, we must understand the gods who ruled over it and the stories told about them. One of the most important figures connected to Samhain was the Dagda. His name means the good god, not because he was morally good, but because he was good at everything. He was a father figure, a god of fertility, agriculture, and immense strength, but also a master of magic. He possessed a cauldron that could never be emptied, from which no one ever went away hungry. This represented the abundance of the harvest. But he also possessed a great club that could kill 9 men with one blow and, with its other end, restore them to life. He was a god of both life and death. The Dagda's dual nature perfectly captured the spirit of Samhain. The festival celebrated the final bounty of the harvest, represented by his magical cauldron. Yet it also marked the beginning of winter's death, represented by his fearsome club. He was a protector of the tribe, a powerful, earthy god who ensured their survival. But his stories also contained elements of the trickster and the fool, reminding the people that even the greatest powers in the universe were complex and unpredictable. He embodied the raw, untamed power of the earth itself, a force that both gives life and takes it away. Another key figure was a goddess who was not 1, but 3. She was known as the Morrigan. Her name is often translated as the Great Queen or Phantom Queen. She was a goddess of war, fate, and death, a shapeshifter who could appear as a beautiful woman, an old hag, or, most famously, as a crow. To see her washing armor in a river before a battle was a terrifying omen, a sign that a warrior was fated to die. She did not cause the death, but she was the embodiment of its inevitability. She was the sovereign power that decided who would live and who would fall. For an ancient Celtic warrior, the Morrigan was a constant presence in his mind. He would pray to her for strength and fury in battle, yet he would also live in absolute terror of her power. She represented the wild, uncontrollable nature of conflict. Her connection to Samhain is profound. As a goddess who moved between worlds and foretold the future, her power was strongest when the veil was thin. Samhain was her time. The cries of crows on a misty autumn evening would not have been just a simple sound of nature. It would have been a chilling reminder that the Great Queen was watching. The myths often tell of a great battle that took place every single Samhain. It was a cosmic fight between the forces of order and chaos. The gods, representing the tribe in the civilized world, had to fight against monstrous beings known as the Fomorians. The Fomorians were often depicted as dark, chaotic sea dwellers who represented the destructive power of nature, blight, fog, and the brutal force of a winter storm. They were the embodiment of the dangers that the community would face during the dark half of the year. This was not a story of good versus evil. This yearly mythical battle was a reflection of what was happening in the natural world. Samhain was the moment when the forces of darkness and decay gained the upper hand. The victory of the Fomorians in the story was a way of explaining why the sun was disappearing, why the land was growing cold, and why death seemed to be all around. The story was not about preventing this from happening. That was impossible. The story was about understanding this cosmic rhythm and ensuring that even in defeat, The seeds of the sun's eventual return were protected through the long winter. So for the people gathered around the Samhain bonfire, the world was filled with these stories. The crackle of the flames, the strange shapes in the darkness, the wind howling through the trees. All of it was connected to the grand mythic drama playing out on a cosmic scale. They weren't just farmers and warriors trying to survive another winter. They were participants in this eternal cycle. Their rituals, their offerings, and their respect for the spirits were their way of playing their part, of helping the gods ensure that the wheel of the year would continue to turn. The Otherworld was not just a place for gods and monsters. It was also the destination of the human soul after death. One of the most famous gateways to this realm was a cave in Ireland known as Owainagat, which means, quote, the cave of the cats. This was considered a literal, physical entrance to the other world. It was said that on the night of Samhain, a host of terrible creatures would swarm out of this cave and blight the surrounding landscape. This belief cemented the idea that Samhain was a time when the boundaries of reality became dangerously porous. This makes the ancient experience of Samhain far more visceral than our modern Halloween. The threat wasn't a person in a costume. It was a shape-shifting goddess who decided your fate, or a monstrous being emerging from a real cave to destroy the land. The fear was not a fun, temporary thrill. It was a deep, existential dread, rooted in a genuine belief that the forces of chaos were being unleashed upon the world. Surviving the night was a real and serious concern, and the rituals of the festival were the only tools they had to ensure their safety. The landscape itself was a character in these beliefs. The ancient Celts saw the world as having three interconnected parts. There was the land, where humanity lived. There was the sea, a source of both bounty and chaos. And there was the sky, the home of the sun, moon, and stars. Samhain was a time when the boundaries between these three realms also became blurred. The mists that rose from the sea and rolled across the land were seen as a physical manifestation of the other world seeping into our own, blurring the edges of reality. The sacred sites where rituals were performed were often chosen because they embodied this connection between the realms. A great hill, like the hill of Tlachta, where the main Samhain fire was said to be lit, reached up towards the sky. From its peak, you could see the entire world spread out below. These were places of power, where a druid could feel closer to the sky gods while still being rooted in the earth. It was from these high places that they would watch the stars and interpret the cosmic signs that were so important for the tribe's survival. These beliefs were not static. They were a living, breathing part of the culture. They explained why things were the way they were. They provided comfort in the face of death and a sense of purpose in the face of hardship. For an ancient Celt, the world was a profoundly meaningful place. Every event, from the smallest change in the weather to the turning of the seasons, was part of a sacred story. Their worldview gave them a sense of belonging, a feeling of being deeply connected to the land, to their ancestors, and to the great, mysterious powers that govern the universe. It is crucial to remember that this world was not a fantasy. It was their reality. The fear they felt on Samhain was as real as the cold air they breathed. The comfort they took from the sacred bonfire was as real as its warmth on their skin. We can look back and call these beliefs mythology, but for them, it was simply the truth. It was the fundamental operating system of their world, guiding their actions, shaping their emotions, and giving meaning to their short, difficult lives in a world that was both beautiful and incredibly dangerous. This was the world before our modern ideas of science and religion took hold. It was a world of magic, mystery, and immense respect for the power of the unseen. Life was fragile, and survival depended on maintaining a delicate balance with the forces of nature and the spirits of the other world. The people were not trying to conquer the world. They were trying to live in harmony with it. Their festivals, especially the great turning point of Samhain, were the most important tool they had for maintaining that sacred and necessary balance. It was their contract with reality. So we have a people deeply connected to the land, a people who see time as a circle, and who believe in a parallel spirit world that is always close by, We have a festival, Samhain, that marks the most dangerous moment in the entire year. It is the night when summer dies, winter begins, and the wall between the world of the living and the world of the spirits completely disappears. The community huddles around a sacred fire, using masks to hide from malevolent ghosts and telling stories of the gods who rule the darkness. This was the original Halloween. It was not about candy, it was about survival. It was not about fun scares. It was about profound, genuine fear. It was not about fantasy. It was about facing what they believed to be the literal, chaotic, and dangerous reality of their universe for one sacred night. The rituals they performed were not for show. They were a matter of life and death, an attempt to appease the old gods, honor the dead, and ensure that the sun and their community would be born again after the long, dark winter. The ancient Celts lived in this world of myth and magic for centuries, their traditions passed down through spoken word and ritual, as constant as the turning of the seasons. The bonfire was lit at Samhain year after year. The stories of the Dagda and the Morrigan were told to generations of children. The belief in the thinning veil was an unquestioned fact of life. This was the foundation. This was the world as it was. But no world lasts forever. The great wheel of time was turning, and a new force was coming from across the sea. This new force was a different kind of faith. It did not believe in a world of many gods who were part of nature. It believed in one God who was separate from and master of nature. It did not believe in a cyclical story of rebirth, but in a linear story of a single life, followed by a final judgment. This new belief, carried by determined missionaries, arrived on the shores of Ireland and Britain with a power that would change everything. The collision of these two worldviews was inevitable. The old ways were about to face their greatest challenge. The new faith arrived not with armies, but in small boats carrying quiet men in simple robes. They spoke of a world that was radically different. Instead of a circle of time, they spoke of a straight line from creation to a final judgment. Instead of many gods who were part of the earth, they spoke of one God who was the creator of all things. For a person who had always seen the divine in the river and the sacred in the oak tree, this was a difficult idea to grasp. Their God was not in the world, but above it. It was a change that would slowly turn the entire Celtic worldview upside down. The missionaries, like the famous St. Patrick, were often strategic and patient. They understood they could not simply erase a belief system that was thousands of years old. They saw the deep devotion the people had to their sacred places, so they did not always destroy the holy wells or the ancient standing stones. Instead, they would often bless them in the name of their own god. They would carve a cross into a pagan stone, claiming its power for their new faith. This was the beginning of a long, slow process of absorption, of blending two very different worlds into one. Imagine a woman who has always gone to a particular spring to pray to the goddess Brigid for a healthy child. A missionary arrives and tells her that the spirit in the well is not a goddess, but that the water has been blessed by a holy woman named Saint Brigid. For this woman, the change might be subtle at first. She can still go to the same sacred place. She can still perform a similar ritual. The name has changed, but the deep, underlying feeling of a sacred power in that place remains. This clever strategy made the new faith feel less foreign and far more familiar. This process happened all across the Celtic lands. The great festival of Imbolc, which was sacred to the goddess Brigid and marked the first stirrings of spring, became the festival of Saint Brigid. The lines began to blur. The stories of the old goddess and the new saint became intertwined until it was difficult to tell them apart. The old ways were not being erased, but given a new mask to wear. This allowed people to hold on to the traditions of their ancestors, while also embracing the powerful new religion that was slowly but surely taking over the land. But what about the most important festival of all? What about Samhain? The church leaders knew they could not simply forbid a celebration that was so central to the people's lives and their understanding of the year. To do so would have created immense resistance. So they employed the same strategy of absorption, but on a grander scale. They decided to place a major Christian festival right on top of the old pagan one, hoping to slowly drain the ancient holiday of its power and replace its meaning with a new, Christian one. The fight for the soul of Samhain had begun. In the 8th century, the church made a powerful move. The Pope officially designated November 1st as All Saints' Day. This was a day to honor all the Christian saints and martyrs. It was a holy day of obligation, a time for solemn reflection and prayer. This was placed directly on top of the most important day of the Samhain festival. The day that had once been about the chaos of the spirit world was now meant to be about the holy order of heaven. The intention was clear: to overwrite the old tradition with the new. Then, a century or two later, the church added another layer. They established November 2nd as All Souls' Day. This was a day set aside to pray for the souls of ordinary people who had died and were believed to be in purgatory, a waiting place between heaven and hell. This new holy day resonated deeply with the older traditions of Samhain. The idea of honoring and connecting with the dead was already a central part of the festival. Now it was given a new Christian context. People could still remember their ancestors, but now they did so through prayer for their souls. And so the festival of Samhain was bracketed by two powerful Christian holy days. The night before All Saints' Day, October 31st, became known as All Hallows' Eve. Hallow is an old word for a holy person or a saint, so All Hallows' Eve was simply the evening before All Saints' Day. Over time, this name would be shortened and corrupted into the word we know today, Halloween. The ancient pagan festival was now wrapped in a Christian package, its name and its official meaning forever changed. But the old spirits did not vanish so easily. While the church absorbed some traditions, it demonized others. The old gods could not be turned into saints. The powerful, feared figures like the Morrigan or the horned god Cernunnos were too wild, too dark to fit into the new system. So they were recast. They became the enemy. In the new Christian stories, these ancient deities were turned into demons, fallen angels, and servants of the devil. The old gods did not disappear. They were simply demoted from respected powers of nature to figures of pure evil, used to frighten people into the new faith. This had a profound effect on how people viewed the Otherworld. The Celtic Otherworld had been a place of both beauty and danger, a parallel reality that was simply different from our own. In the Christian worldview, the supernatural realm was split into two opposing camps: the absolute good of heaven and the absolute evil of hell. The magical AOC, the people of the mounds, were caught in the middle. They were no longer seen as proud, ancient spirits of the land. They were reimagined as mischievous and malevolent fairies, imps or goblins, tricksters who would try to lead good Christian souls astray. Think of the confusion and fear this must have caused. Imagine a grandfather telling his grandchildren stories of the Dagda, the great and good god who protected the tribe. Then the child goes to the village priest, who tells him that the Dagda is actually a devil in disguise, a liar who wants to steal his soul. The sacred stories of the ancestors were now being labeled as dangerous lies. A worldview that had given comfort and meaning for countless generations was now being systematically dismantled and turned into a source of sin and terror. The spiritual ground was shifting beneath everyone's feet. The rituals of Samhain also began to change. The great bonfire was still lit on All Hallows' Eve, but its purpose was subtly altered. Before, it was a sacred fire to honor the sun and guide the spirits of the ancestors home while warding off dangerous beings from the other world. Now, under Christian influence, the fire's purpose was to ward off the devil and his demons, who were believed to be especially powerful on this night. The fire was no longer a beacon for spirits, but a weapon against them. The old ritual continued, but its soul was being rewritten. The practice of wearing costumes and masks also continued, but its meaning shifted as well. The original purpose was to disguise oneself from the powerful spirits of the other world. In the new Christian context, the costumes often became representations of demons, devils, and witches. The act of dressing up was now seen by some as a way of mocking the devil, showing him that he had no power over good Christian folk. For others, it was still a way to hide. The old fears lingered, but now they had new names and new faces. The name of the enemy had changed. The connection to the dead also transformed. The Celtic belief was that the dead returned to their homes to share a meal with the living. Under the influence of All Souls' Day, a new tradition emerged called souling. Poor people, often children, would go from door to door, offering to say prayers for the souls of a family's dead relatives. In exchange, they would be given a small soul cake. This was a direct evolution of the old practice of leaving food out for the ancestors, but now it was filtered through the Christian ideas of prayer and purgatory. The very atmosphere of the night began to change. What was once a night of profound spiritual significance, a moment outside of time, was now increasingly seen as a night of supernatural mischief and evil. The focus shifted from honoring a natural cycle of death and rebirth to a battle between the forces of good and evil, God and the devil. The old spirits of the land were no longer just indifferent or dangerous. They were actively malevolent, seeking to corrupt and destroy. The deep, earthy spirituality of Samhain was being replaced by a morality tale of sin and salvation. The Druids, the keepers of the old knowledge, could not survive this change. Their power came from an oral tradition and a deep connection to the tribal structure. The new faith brought with it writing and a powerful, organized church that stretched all the way to Rome. Monks began to write down the old Celtic myths, but they did so through a Christian lens. They preserved the stories, but they often changed them, adding in Christian morals or presenting the old gods as mere mortal kings or magicians from a distant past, stripping them of their divinity. The old world was fading into legend. For centuries, these two belief systems existed side by side, blending and clashing. In a remote village, a farmer might go to Mass on Sunday morning, but in the evening, still leave out a bowl of milk for the fairies, just in case. He would pray to God for a good harvest, but also be careful not to disturb a lone hawthorn tree, which was known to be a gateway to the other world. The new faith was the roof of the house, but the old beliefs were the foundation, hidden beneath the floorboards but still holding everything up. This blend created the folk traditions that would carry the spirit of Samhain forward. The practice of divination, of fortune-telling, on this night remained incredibly popular. It was too deeply ingrained to be stamped out. People still used nuts and apples to try to predict their future spouse or their fortune for the coming year. The church frowned upon such practices as superstition, but they could not stop them. It was a powerful reminder that for many ordinary people, this night was still a time when the veil was thin, a time when it was possible to catch a glimpse of the future. The magic of the old world refused to die completely. One of the most famous divination games involved apples. A young person would try to peel an apple in one continuous strand. If they succeeded, they would swing the peel around their head 3 times and let it drop to the floor. The shape the peel formed was believed to be the initial of their future true love. Another custom was apple bobbing. The first person to successfully grab an apple with their teeth was said to be the next to marry. These seemingly harmless party games are the direct descendants of serious, sacred rituals designed to pierce the veil and see into the world of fate. And so, by the end of the Middle Ages, All Hallows Eve had become a strange and complex tapestry. It was a Christian holy day, but it was woven with the threads of a much older pagan festival. It was a night of prayer for the souls of the dead, but also a night of fear, where demons and witches were thought to roam the earth. It was a time of solemn remembrance that was also filled with games of fortune-telling and mischief. The original spirit of Samhain was no longer in plain sight, but it was still there, lurking in the shadows, in the flicker of the bonfire, and in the superstitions of the people. Let us now turn our attention back to a central image of our modern Halloween, the carved pumpkin with a face, the jack-o'-lantern. We have established the ancient world of Samhain and seen how it was transformed into All Hallows' Eve. But where does this specific, iconic tradition come from? Its origins are not in a vegetable, but in a haunting folktale that grew out of this very blend of old pagan fears and new Christian morality. It is a story about a man who was so clever he tricked the devil himself and was punished for it for all eternity. The story is that of a man known as Stingy Jack. Jack was a miserable, drunk, and manipulative trickster who lived in Ireland. One night, the devil himself came to claim Jack's wicked soul. But Jack was clever. He tricked the devil into climbing an apple tree to fetch him one last piece of fruit. As soon as the devil was in the branches, Jack quickly carved a cross into the trunk of the tree, trapping him. The devil, a sacred Christian symbol now holding him powerless, could not get down. Jack had trapped the Prince of Darkness with his wit. Jack made a bargain with the trapped devil. He would let him down, but only if the devil promised never to take his soul. The devil, furious but with no other choice, reluctantly agreed. Years later, Jack died. He went up to the gates of heaven, but because of his sinful, cruel life, St. Peter refused to let him in. Rejected from heaven, Jack then went down to the gates of hell and knocked, expecting to enter. But the devil kept his promise. He told Jack he could not take his soul and turned him away from the gates of hell as well. Jack was now trapped. He was locked out of heaven and locked out of hell. He had nowhere to go. He complained to the devil that he could not see, as it was dark. The devil, as a final mocking gesture, tossed Jack a single burning coal from the fires of hell to light his way. To carry the ember, Jack hollowed out his favorite food, a large turnip, and placed the coal inside. From that day on, the soul of Stingy Jack was doomed to wander the earth for eternity, a ghostly figure in the darkness, carrying his crude lantern. He became known as Jack of the Lantern. This story is a perfect example of the blended world of All Hallows' Eve. It contains the Christian figures of the devil and St. Peter, and the concept of heaven and hell. But at its heart is a much older, more pagan idea: the restless, wandering soul trapped between worlds. This is exactly the kind of spirit that the ancient Celts feared might cross over during Samhain. The story of Jack is a Christian morality tale, a warning against trying to outsmart the devil, but it is built upon a pre-Christian foundation of fear about the wandering dead. Because of this story, people in Ireland and Scotland began to carve their own lanterns on All Hallows' Eve. But they did not have pumpkins. They used what they had: large turnips, potatoes, or beets. They would hollow out the tough root vegetables and carve crude, frightening faces into them. Then, they would place a candle or a hot coal inside. These were the original jack-o'-lanterns. They were not cheerful decorations. They were objects of fear, meant to represent a damned soul and, more importantly, to scare away Stingy Jack and other evil spirits that might be roaming the night. Imagine a child in a small, dark village in 18th century Ireland. On All Hallows' Eve, their father spends an hour painstakingly hollowing out a tough, bitter turnip. He carves a terrifying, demonic face into its side. When he places a candle inside, the grotesque face glows with a sinister, flickering light, casting dancing, monstrous shadows on the walls of their small cottage. He then places it in the window, or by the door. This was not a fun craft project. It was a serious act of magical protection, a shield, against the real and terrifying forces of darkness they believed were just outside. The world of folklore that gave us Stingy Jack was rich with other supernatural beings that were believed to be active on All Hallows' Eve. Witches were a particularly great source of fear. It was thought to be a night when witches held great Sabbaths, flying through the air to meet with the devil. The image of a witch on a broomstick, silhouetted against the full moon, became one of the most enduring symbols of this holiday. This fear was not just a story. For centuries, real people, mostly women, were accused of witchcraft and persecuted for it. Black cats also became associated with Halloween during this period. They were often believed to be familiars, supernatural spirits that assisted witches in their magic. Some folklore even suggested that a witch could shapeshift and take the form of a black cat to move about undetected. This superstition led to a great deal of cruelty towards these animals, but it also cemented their place in the iconography of the holiday. A black cat crossing your path on All Hallows' Eve was considered a particularly bad omen, a sign that the devil was watching you. Bats were another creature of the night that became linked to Halloween. Their nocturnal nature naturally associated them with darkness. The large bonfires that were still lit on this night would attract insects, which in turn would attract bats, who would swoop and dive through the firelight. To the people gathered around, these mysterious flying creatures seemed like spirits of the night, further adding to the eerie atmosphere. In some folklore, they were also seen as messengers of the devil, or spirits of the dead. Their presence was just another sign that the normal order of the world was suspended. And so, the celebration of All Hallows' Eve continued in Ireland, Scotland, and other Celtic lands for hundreds of years. It was a night of contradictions. It was a Christian vigil, a folk festival, and a night of profound superstition. The old spirit of Samhain was still there, but it was buried under layers of Christian theology and folk tales about Stingy Jack, witches, and demons. The festival was a shadow of its former self, a collection of traditions whose original meanings were slowly being forgotten. But the story was not over. The wheel was about to turn again. In the middle of the 19th century, a great tragedy struck Ireland. The potato crop, the main source of food for most of the population, failed completely. A terrible famine swept across the land, leading to mass starvation and disease. Millions of people were faced with a stark choice: stay and risk death, or leave their ancestral homeland forever in search of a new life. This event, the Great Famine, would change Ireland forever, and it would be the catalyst that would carry the traditions of All Hallows' Eve across the Atlantic Ocean to a new world. Vast numbers of Irish immigrants boarded crowded, dangerous ships and set sail for America. They left with very few possessions, but they carried with them something incredibly valuable: their culture. They brought their music, their language, their stories, and their traditions. They brought their Catholic faith, but they also brought their deep-rooted folk beliefs. And in their collective memory, they carried the spirit of that ancient festival, the night when the ghosts walked and lanterns were carved to ward off evil. All Hallows' Eve was about to be reborn in a new land. When the Irish immigrants arrived in America, they found a country that was very different from their own. America was a melting pot of different cultures and religions. In the beginning, the strict Protestant communities that dominated parts of the country looked down upon the Irish and their Catholic superstitious holidays. Early Halloween celebrations in America were small, isolated affairs, confined to the immigrant communities who had brought the traditions with them. For a time, it seemed the old festival might finally fade away completely in this new, modern world. But the traditions were strong. In their new homes, Irish families continued to celebrate All Hallows' Eve. They told the story of Stingy Jack. They organized play parties with apple bobbing and fortune-telling games, just as they had back home. And they continued the tradition of carving jack-o'-lanterns. But in America, they found a new vegetable that was perfect for this purpose. It was larger, softer, and easier to carve than a turnip. It was the pumpkin. and this simple agricultural fact would change the face of the holiday forever. The pumpkin, native to North America, was the perfect canvas for the jack-o'-lantern. It was big enough to carve elaborate, expressive faces, and its bright orange color was festive and striking. The moment the Irish immigrants began carving pumpkins instead of turnips, the modern image of Halloween began to take shape. The glowing, grinning pumpkin face became a uniquely American symbol for the holiday, a perfect blend of an ancient Irish folk tradition and the agricultural abundance of the New World. The spooky turnip was replaced by the cheerful pumpkin. As the 19th century progressed, other immigrant groups, like the millions of Scottish people who also came to America, brought their own versions of the holiday traditions. The various customs began to mix and merge. The Irish story of the jack-o'-lantern blended with Scottish fortune-telling games and English customs of mumming and begging. In the great American melting pot, these different streams of folk tradition began to flow together, creating a new, uniquely American version of Halloween that was less about religious observance and more about community celebration. By the late 1800s, Halloween was starting to become a more mainstream American holiday. Magazines and newspapers began to feature articles about how to host a Halloween party. They published instructions for playing games like apple bobbing and told romanticized versions of the holiday's folk traditions. The focus began to shift away from ghosts and evil spirits and towards a more lighthearted celebration of autumn. The holiday was being stripped of its deep religious and superstitious roots and repackaged as a secular, social event for families and communities. This period also saw a rise in mischief and pranks on Halloween night. Young people, particularly boys, would use the night as an excuse for vandalism, playing tricks on their neighbors that ranged from harmless to destructive. This became a serious problem in many towns and cities. Community leaders began to look for ways to control the chaos of Halloween. Their solution was to try and domesticate the holiday, to transform it from a night of unruly pranks into an organized, safe activity for children. The answer was a new take on an old tradition. The solution was to promote the practice of trick-or-treating. It was a way to channel the chaotic energy of the night into a structured and supervised activity. It drew on the old traditions of mumming, guising, and souling, where people went door to door, reciting verses or prayers in exchange for food. But it was given a new, American twist. The idea was simple. Instead of playing a trick or a prank on a homeowner, children would be given a treat instead. It was a clever bargain, designed to buy peace and keep the mischief under control. In the early 20th century, communities began to actively organize Halloween for children. They held parades, costume contests, and parties. The message was clear. Halloween was a holiday for kids. This was a radical transformation. The ancient and terrifying festival of Samhain, a night when the dead walked and the fate of the world hung in the balance, was now being tamed. It was being turned into a safe, fun, and commercialized event, centered not on adult fears, but on the joy and imagination of children. The final steps of its modern reinvention were falling into place. The rise of mass-produced costumes and decorations in the 1920s and 30s cemented this change. Before, costumes were handmade and often designed to be genuinely frightening. Now, companies began selling costumes based on popular characters from radio, comics, and movies. Witches, ghosts, and skeletons were still popular, but they were joined by cowboys, princesses, and superheroes. Halloween was becoming less about folklore and more about pop culture. The holiday was becoming a big business, driven by consumerism. After World War II, with the growth of the suburbs, trick-or-treating as we know it exploded in popularity. The quiet, safe streets of suburban neighborhoods were the perfect environment for this ritual. It became a rite of passage for generations of American children. The focus shifted almost entirely to the accumulation of candy. The ancient idea of offering food to spirits or the poor in exchange for prayers had been completely transformed into a childhood fantasy of collecting sweets. The last vestiges of its spiritual meaning were being buried under a mountain of sugar. The old fears and superstitions of All Hallows' Eve did not vanish entirely. They were simply moved from the realm of belief into the realm of entertainment. The genuine terror of wandering spirits and malevolent witches was replaced by the safe, controlled thrill of a haunted house or a scary movie. People could now enjoy the feeling of being frightened, knowing that it wasn't real. The supernatural became a product to be consumed, a genre of entertainment rather than a lived reality. Samhain had been fully domesticated. So let us pause and look at the journey so far. We began with Samhain, a sacred and terrifying night when the veil between worlds dissolved. We saw how this festival was absorbed by Christianity, becoming All Hallows' Eve, a night where pagan spirits were rebranded as Christian demons. We followed the folk tale of Stingy Jack, which gave us the first Jack-o' lantern, carved from a turnip to ward off a damned soul. We saw this tradition carried across the ocean by desperate immigrants, where it found a new home in the American pumpkin. And in America, we watched as the holiday was transformed once more. The chaotic energy of the night was tamed and focused on children through the ritual of trick-or-treating. The genuine belief in the supernatural was replaced by the fun of scary movies and haunted houses. The community festival became a massive commercial enterprise. The direct line from the ancient Druids' bonfire to the modern suburban doorstep is long and twisted, but it is unbroken. Every step of the transformation left its mark on the holiday we know today. But even in our modern Halloween, echoes of the ancient world remain if we know where to look. The act of putting on a costume is a faint memory of the ancient practice of disguising oneself from wandering spirits. The ritual of going from door to door is the descendant of the Solars, who begged for cakes in exchange for prayers. And the Jack-o' lantern on the porch is the direct heir of the grotesque, glowing turnip carved to frighten away the lost soul of Jack. These ancient spirits are still with us, hidden in plain sight. The core theme of Samhain was the breakdown of boundaries. It was a night when the wall between the living and the dead, the natural and the supernatural, the old year and the new one, all disappeared. In a strange way, our modern Halloween continues this tradition. It is a night when social boundaries break down. Children can demand things from adults. People can dress up as someone or something else, temporarily shedding their own identity. It is still a night when the normal rules of life are suspended, even if only for fun. The ancient world of the Celts is gone. No one truly believes anymore that a great host of spirits will pour out of the fairy mounds on October 31st. The great wheel of the year has been replaced by the linear calendar. But the emotional core of that night, that deep human fascination with darkness, death, and the unknown, has never left us. The need to confront the darkness at the end of the year, to light a fire against the cold and to remember those who have gone before, is a powerful and enduring human impulse. The story of how an ancient, sacred festival of the dead became a modern night of costumes and candy is a story of transformation. It is a story of migration, of cultures clashing and blending, and of beliefs being forgotten and reborn in new forms. We have followed the spirit of Samhain from the misty hills of ancient Ireland to the bustling suburbs of modern America. We have seen its original face, but we have not yet fully answered the question we asked at the very beginning. We must now connect the final threads and close the loop. The question we must now ask is a deeper one. How did the feeling of the night change so completely? The shift from sacred terror to commercial fun was not accidental. It was a long process of forgetting. For the ancient Celt, every part of Samhain was charged with meaning. The fire was not just a fire, it was a piece of the sun. The mask was not just a mask, it was a spiritual shield. Each action was connected to a vast, invisible world. For the modern child, these symbols have become hollow. They are just for fun, their original purpose lost to the mists of time. Consider the ghost. In the ancient world, a ghost was the literal spirit of a dead ancestor, returning to the family hearth for warmth and remembrance. It was a real presence, treated with respect and a little bit of fear. In the Christian folklore of All Hallows' Eve, a ghost became a more tormented figure, a soul trapped between worlds, possibly dangerous. Today, a ghost is a child under a white sheet with holes cut for eyes. The symbol remains, but the belief that powered it has evaporated. It is an image without its soul, a costume that has forgotten its own story. The same is true of the witch. For the Celt, there were powerful female figures, druidesses and goddesses like the Morrigan, who held the power of fate and prophecy. They were figures of immense respect and awe. During the Christian era, this image of a powerful woman with secret knowledge was twisted into the evil, devil-worshipping witch of folklore. Today, the witch is one of the most popular Halloween costumes for children. It is often portrayed as cute or silly, with a pointy hat and a toy broomstick. The original power and the later terror have both been completely neutralized, turned into a playful caricature. This process of emptying the symbols of their meaning accelerated dramatically in the 20th century with the rise of mass media. Movies played a huge role. In the 1930s and 40s, classic monster movies featuring Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, and the Wolfman became incredibly popular. These figures had their own roots in European folklore, but on screen, they became Halloween icons. The ancient spirits of the Irish landscape were slowly pushed aside by a new pantheon of Hollywood monsters. These monsters were thrilling, but everyone knew they were just actors on a screen. The fear was entertaining, not real. Television had an even greater impact, bringing Halloween directly into the family living room. Every year, television specials would feature beloved cartoon characters celebrating a friendly, sanitized version of the holiday. These shows taught generations of children what Halloween was supposed to be about: costumes, candy, and maybe a gentle scare from a friendly ghost. This constant exposure through media created a standardized, national idea of what Halloween was. It was no longer a regional folk tradition with local variations. It was a shared commercial and cultural event, the same from coast to coast. Imagine a family in the 1960s. Their Halloween experience is shaped almost entirely by this new commercial culture. The mother buys plastic masks and cheap costumes from a department store. The children carry plastic pumpkins to collect candy made in factories hundreds of miles away. In the evening, they watch a Halloween cartoon on television. This experience is a universe away from that of the ancient Celtic family, huddled around their sacred fire, listening to the druid chant the old stories. The connection to the land, the harvest, the ancestors, and the gods has been completely severed. The ritual has become a routine. By the latter half of the 20th century, Halloween had become big business. It grew into the second largest commercial holiday in the United States, surpassed only by Christmas. Billions of dollars are spent every year on candy, costumes, decorations, and party supplies. The simple, handmade traditions of the past have been replaced by a massive industry. This commercial pressure constantly pushes the holiday to be bigger, brighter, and more elaborate. It also ensures that the focus remains on consumption, on buying things to celebrate, rather than on any deeper spiritual or communal meaning. The marketplace, not the myth, now dictates the festival. As the holiday became more commercialized, it also became more focused on adults. In the 1970s and 80s, Halloween parties for adults became increasingly popular. The holiday became an excuse for grown-ups to shed their inhibitions, to dress up in elaborate costumes, and to engage in a night of revelry. In a strange way, this was a faint echo of the boundary-dissolving nature of the original Samhain. It was still a night when the normal rules were suspended, but the purpose was no longer spiritual survival. It was social release. The focus shifted from warding off spirits to drinking them. But a fascinating thing happened as Halloween became more secular and commercial. Some people began to feel that something important had been lost. They looked at the plastic skeletons and the mountains of candy and felt a longing for a deeper connection, for a meaning that had been forgotten. They began to look back, past the centuries of Christian overlay and American reinvention, searching for the original soul of the festival. They wanted to rediscover the world of the ancient Celts. This marked the beginning of a quiet rebellion against the modern Halloween. This searching led to the rise of modern neo-paganism and Wicca, spiritual movements that seek to revive the pre-Christian religions of Europe. For these groups, Samhain is not Halloween. It is the most sacred night of the year. They have studied the old myths, the folklore, and the archaeology to piece together the original beliefs and practices. For them, the thinning of the veil is not a metaphor. It is a spiritual reality. They have actively chosen to step back into the older worldview, to re-enchant the world that science and consumerism have stripped of its magic. For a modern pagan celebrating Samhain, the night is a profound and solemn affair. They might gather with a group, often outdoors, perhaps near an old tree or a body of water. They will likely light a bonfire, not just for warmth, but as a sacred act. They will call out the names of their ancestors, leaving offerings of food and drink for their spirits. They will meditate on the themes of death and rebirth, honoring the cycle of the seasons. They are not playing a game or wearing a costume for fun. They are participating in a religious ritual that connects them to their heritage and to the earth. Imagine a young woman who feels disconnected from the modern world. She finds the commercialism of Halloween to be empty. She discovers a local pagan group and attends her first Samhain ritual. Standing in the cool autumn air, the firelight on her face, she hears the ancient stories for the first time. She leaves an apple on an altar for her grandmother who passed away years ago. For her, this experience is intensely powerful and meaningful. It fills a spiritual void that a plastic pumpkin never could. She is not just remembering history, she is trying to live it. So now, on the night of October 31st, a strange duality exists. On the same suburban street, two completely different events are unfolding. In one house, children dressed as superheroes are excitedly counting their candy. Their Halloween is a celebration of innocence, fantasy, and consumption. But a few doors down, or perhaps in a park nearby, a small group of people are gathered in a circle. They are quietly honoring the dead and feeling the turn of the cosmic wheel. Their Samhain is a celebration of ancestry, nature, and spiritual reality. The ancient festival and its modern ghost are living side by side. This reclaiming of Samhain shows how powerful the original ideas still are. The need to connect with our ancestors, to mark the changing of the seasons, and to contemplate the great mystery of death are fundamental human needs. Modern society, with its bright lights and constant distractions, often leaves little room for these things. The revival of Samhain is a testament to the fact that these ancient themes still resonate deeply within us. We still feel the chill in the air as winter approaches, and we still wonder about what lies beyond the veil. The story of Halloween, therefore, is not a straight line. It is a circle. A sacred Celtic festival was buried by a new religion, transformed by folk culture, crossed an ocean, was reborn as a children's holiday, and then, in a final twist, its original form was rediscovered and revived by people searching for meaning in the modern world. The old spirit of Samhain, which had been sleeping for centuries beneath layers of new traditions, was awakened. It is a powerful reminder that you can change the name and the customs, but you can never completely erase an idea that is so deeply tied to the human heart. Meanwhile, the commercial American version of Halloween began to spread across the globe. Fueled by American movies, television shows, and pop culture, the imagery of grinning pumpkins, trick-or-treating, and costume parties began to appear in countries with no historical connection to the holiday whatsoever. The festival, now completely detached from its Celtic and agricultural roots, became a free-floating cultural export. It was seen as modern, fun, and a little bit rebellious. It was another piece of Americana, like blue jeans or rock and roll, adopted and adapted around the world. In Japan, for example, Halloween has become a massive event, particularly for young adults. It has nothing to do with autumn, harvest, or the dead. Instead, it is almost entirely focused on elaborate costumes, or cosplay, and huge street parties in cities like Tokyo. For them, Halloween is a celebration of pop culture and creative self-expression. The ancient spirits of Samhain would not recognize this festival at all. It is a ghost of a ghost, an echo that has traveled so far from its source that its original sound has been completely lost, replaced by a new and vibrant noise. In many parts of Europe, the spread of American-style Halloween has been met with mixed feelings. In countries like France and Germany, some see it as a fun, harmless party. Others see it as an unwelcome invasion of consumer culture that threatens their own local traditions for honoring the dead, such as the more solemn and family-oriented All Saints' Day. This creates a cultural tension between the loud, commercial fun of the imported Halloween and the quiet, traditional remembrance of native customs. It is a modern echo of the clash between the old faith and the new one centuries ago. And what about in Ireland, the land where it all began? For a long time, the old traditions persisted in a subdued form, but in recent decades, the American version of Halloween has swept back across the Atlantic to its ancestral home. Now, Irish children go trick-or-treating and carve pumpkins, just like their American cousins. The globalized, commercial version of the holiday is now replacing the very folk traditions from which it grew. It is a strange and ironic homecoming, where the child has returned to teach the parent, having forgotten its own name and history. This global spread highlights the final transformation of the festival. It has become a truly secular holiday. Its religious meanings, both pagan and Christian, have been almost entirely stripped away. It is a blank canvas onto which different cultures can project their own ideas about fun, community, and fantasy. It no longer needs the turning of the seasons or the belief in wandering spirits to exist. It can be celebrated anywhere, at any time, by anyone who has seen it in a movie. Its power now comes from media, not from mythology. So we have traced this incredible journey, from a sacred night of fire and spirits in the ancient Celtic world, to a Christianized festival of saints and souls, to a night of folklore and superstition in rural Ireland, giving birth to the jack-o'-lantern, to a new life in America, where it was transformed by immigration, commercialism, and the cheerful pumpkin, and finally, to a global pop culture phenomenon, a festival that belongs to everyone and no one. The form has changed almost beyond recognition, but the date on the calendar remains the same. Let's return to our starting point. The child in the bright costume, the smiling pumpkin on the doorstep. We now understand the long, winding road that brought them here. We know that the costume is a distant echo of a magical disguise. We know that the tradition of asking for treats is the ghost of a ritual for the dead. And we know that the pumpkin's ancestor was not a cheerful decoration, but a grotesque talisman, a hollowed-out turnip with a burning coal from hell inside, meant to ward off a damned and wandering soul. The contrast is astonishing. The original hook of our story was this very contrast. How did one thing become the other? How did the sacred and terrifying night of Samhain become the safe and fun holiday of Halloween? We have seen the steps. It was a process of suppression, absorption, migration, and commercialization. Each step took the festival further away from its original meaning. Each generation forgot a little more of the old story and added a new layer of their own. The history of Halloween is a perfect example of how culture evolves, how ancient beliefs can survive by changing their masks. But knowing the history is only part of the answer. The deeper question remains: why does this holiday persist at all? Why, after thousands of years, in our modern scientific world, do we still feel a pull towards this one night of the year? Other ancient festivals have faded into obscurity, but this one has not only survived, it has thrived and conquered the globe. What fundamental human need does it satisfy? What ancient itch does it still scratch, even in its modern, sanitized form? The answer lies not just in history, but in psychology. At its core, the ancient festival of Samhain was a way for people to confront their greatest fears in a controlled, ritualized way. Their fears were of the darkness, of the winter, of starvation, and of death itself. These were not abstract ideas, they were real and present dangers. The festival allowed the community to face these fears together, to look them in the eye, to name them, and to light a fire against them. It was a form of collective therapy, a way of managing the anxiety of a dangerous and uncertain world. We no longer fear that the sun will not return, or that monstrous beings will emerge from a cave to blight the land. Our modern fears are different. We fear chaos, violence, economic uncertainty, and our own mortality. But the basic mechanism for dealing with that fear can still be the same. Modern Halloween, in its own way, is also a ritual for confronting fear. It allows us, and especially our children, to play with scary things, ghosts, monsters, skeletons, in a perfectly safe environment. We can scream at a scary movie, but then turn on the lights. By dressing up as a monster, a child gains a sense of power over it. They are not the victim of the scary thing. They are the scary thing. This is an incredibly empowering experience. It teaches them to master their own fears. The whole ritual of trick-or-treating is a safe adventure. Children go out into the darkness, a place they are normally told to avoid, and they are rewarded for their bravery with treats. It is a controlled encounter with the unknown. It is a modern, playful version of the same impulse that drove the ancients to wear masks and venture out on Samhain night. The holiday also speaks to our deep fascination with death. In our modern Western culture, death is often hidden away. It is a sanitized medical event that happens in hospitals, out of sight. We are uncomfortable talking about it. But Halloween is the one night of the year when death is brought out into the open. Skeletons and ghosts are everywhere. Fake graveyards appear on suburban lawns. We are surrounded by the symbols of mortality. This allows us to acknowledge the reality of death in a way that is playful and non-threatening. It is a release valve for a topic that is normally taboo. Furthermore, Halloween is a celebration of the imagination. In a world that is often rigid and demands conformity, Halloween is a night of pure creativity and fantasy. You can be anyone or anything you want to be. It is a temporary escape from the boundaries of your everyday identity. This taps into a fundamental human need for play and for transformation. It is the same impulse that drove the ancient Celts to believe that the boundaries of reality itself could dissolve for one night. We are still drawn to the idea of a world where anything is possible. The communal aspect is also vitally important. The ancient Samhain was a festival that brought the entire tribe together to face the coming darkness. Modern Halloween, particularly trick-or-treating, is one of the last remaining rituals where we interact directly with our neighbors. For one night, we open our doors to strangers and share something with them. It builds a sense of community in a way that few other holidays do. It reinforces the idea that we are all in this together, a tribe of neighbors lighting up the darkness, one porch light at a time. So, the ancient needs are still being met, but in new ways. The need to confront fear, the need to contemplate death, the need to use our imagination and transform ourselves, and the need to come together as a community to face the dark. These are the deep roots that anchor the holiday, the reasons it continues to thrive, even as its surface appearance changes. The grinning pumpkin may look very different from the sacred bonfire, but in a way they are both doing the same job. They are a light in the darkness. Let us look again at the symbols, but this time, through this deeper lens. The jack-o', lantern. On the surface, it is just a decoration. But what is it really? It is a human-made light. It is a face that we have carved. We take a product of the earth, something that grew in the darkness of the soil, and we put a fire inside it, transforming it into a beacon. It is a perfect symbol of the human ability to create light and meaning in the face of the encroaching dark. It is our defiant answer to the coming winter of the world. The costume. On the surface, it is just for fun. But it is also a powerful tool of empathy and exploration. When we dress as a monster, we are trying to understand the other. When we dress as a hero, we are trying on a version of our best selves. It is a ritual of transformation, a reminder that our identities are not fixed. For one night, we can step outside of ourselves and see the world through different eyes. It is a brief, joyful escape from the prison of the self, an echo of the shape-shifting gods of the ancient world. The act of trick-or-treating. On the surface, it is about candy, but it is a strange and beautiful ritual. Children, the most vulnerable members of our society, are sent out into the night. They go to the homes of strangers, but instead of being met with fear, they are met with generosity. The community collectively agrees to suspend its normal rules of caution and suspicion for one night, and instead chooses to trust and to share. It is a powerful, unspoken pact that strengthens the bonds of the neighborhood. It is a ritual of trust in the darkness. Even the scary stories in haunted houses serve a vital purpose. They are what scholars call a safe scare. They allow us to experience the thrill of fear in a completely controlled environment. Our heart pounds, our adrenaline rushes, but we know we are not in any real danger. This is incredibly beneficial. It allows us to practice our fear response, to feel a sense of mastery over it. We walk out of the haunted house laughing, feeling brave and alive. It is a way to inoculate ourselves against the real, uncontrollable fears of the world. When you peel back the layers of the modern Halloween, you find the faint outlines of the ancient world everywhere. The holiday's enduring power comes from the fact that it is still, in its heart, a festival about the boundary between light and dark, order and chaos, life and death. We may have forgotten the original names of the gods and the specific meanings of the rituals, but we have not forgotten the feeling. We still feel a shiver as the days grow shorter and the nights grow longer. We still feel the primal need to light a candle against the dark. The history of Halloween is not just a story about a single holiday. It is a story about how we, as humans, deal with the great mysteries of existence. Every culture throughout history has had its own ways of marking the passage of time and honoring the dead. The story of Samhain is the specific version that was born in the misty green islands of the North Atlantic, and it is the one that, through a series of historical accidents, became a global phenomenon. But its themes are universal. It speaks to something that is true for all of us. The world of the ancient Celts was one where the veil between worlds was thin. Our modern world is one where we have tried to make that veil as thick and as solid as possible. We have used science, reason, and electric light to push the darkness back, to convince ourselves that there is nothing on the other side. We have tried to build a world with no shadows, no mysteries, no ghosts, but we have not entirely succeeded. And for one night a year, we seem to feel a collective need to poke a few holes in that veil. Halloween is the night we give the darkness its due. We acknowledge that the world is still a strange, mysterious, and sometimes frightening place. We allow the irrational, the magical, and the monstrous to have their moment. For a few hours, we let the ghosts and goblins out of the attic of our modern, rational minds and allow them to dance in the streets. And then, when the night is over, we can put them away again, feeling refreshed and a little more whole, having acknowledged the shadow side of life. This journey has taken us thousands of years into the past and back again. We have stood with the Druids around a sacred fire and walked with a child through a modern suburb. We have seen how belief systems rise and fall, and how traditions can be transformed in ways their creators could never have imagined. The story is a long and complex one, full of surprising twists and turns. But now, we are ready to put all the pieces together to give the final, clear answer to the question that started our journey. Let us return, one last time, to that smiling pumpkin on the doorstep. We asked in the beginning how its ancestor could have been a human head used to ward off a soul-stealing creature. This was not literal in the sense of a physical head, but symbolic of the deep fears the original festival was meant to confront. The ancient Celts believed in a practice of head hunting, seeing the head as the seat of the soul and a powerful magical object. A severed head was a symbol of ultimate power over an enemy, a way to capture their spirit. The light inside the carved turnip, and later the pumpkin, is a folk memory of this idea. It represents a captured spirit, a tamed power. The story of Stingy Jack tells of a man whose soul is trapped inside a lantern. The lantern itself is a container for a spirit, in this case, a burning ember from hell. By placing this object at your door, you were essentially displaying a captured demon, a tamed piece of the Otherworld's power. It was a warning to other, more malevolent spirits. We have power over your kind. Stay away. So the grinning pumpkin is not just a cheerful face. It is the end result of a very long and dark, symbolic journey. It is the descendant of a belief in the magical power of the human head. It is the descendant of the terrifying folktale of a man who tricked the devil and was damned for it. It is the descendant of a grotesque turnip carved to frighten away evil spirits. The fear has been drained away, and the ferocity has been replaced with a smile, but the underlying function is still there. It is a guardian at the threshold. It is a light that we control, placed at the boundary between the safe space of our home and the unknown darkness of the outside world. This is the very same principle that guided the ancient Celt who brought a torch from the sacred bonfire back to his home. He was bringing a piece of the sacred, protective light to guard his own threshold against the chaos of the night. The technology has changed from a torch to a candle in a pumpkin, but the deep, symbolic act of guarding the threshold with a special light on this one night remains the same. And what of the soul-stealing creature? This refers to the many beings of the Celtic Otherworld, the Oz-Sea, who were believed to be active on Samhain. Some stories told of them stealing mortals, especially children, and taking them back to their world, from which they could never return. A person's soul, or their very self, could be lost to the spirit world on this night. The disguises and the protective fires were a literal defense against this spiritual threat. The fear of having your essence stolen by an otherworldly being was very real. Today, the soul-stealing creature has been transformed into the playful demand of trick or treat. The threat is no longer that a spirit will take your soul, but that a child will play a harmless prank. And the offering is no longer a sacrifice to appease a powerful god, but a piece of candy to appease a small child. The entire terrifying transaction has been miniaturized and domesticated. It has been turned into a game, but at its heart, it is still a ritualized exchange at the doorstep, a negotiation with a mysterious, masked figure who has come out of the darkness. So the answer to our original question is this. The pumpkin on our doorstep is the final, friendly, domesticated form of an ancient and terrifying magical practice. Its ancestor was the idea of the head as a spiritual weapon, a concept that was filtered through folklore into the story of a damned soul in a lantern. This lantern was used as a talisman to ward off the very real fear of soul-stealing spirits that were believed to walk the earth when the veil between worlds was thin. One became the other through a slow process of forgetting, reinterpreting, and commercializing. The journey from a sacred ritual of survival to a secular holiday of fun is complete. But understanding this journey does not diminish our modern Halloween. It enriches it. It allows us to see the deep history that shimmers just beneath the surface of our modern customs. It reminds us that our traditions are not invented from nothing. They are ancient trees with deep roots, and we are just the latest leaves to grow on their branches. To know the story is to see the ghost of the druid standing behind the child in the superhero costume. The next time you see a jack-o'-lantern, perhaps you will see it differently. You will see not just a vegetable, but a symbol of humanity's ancient and enduring need to create light in the darkness. You will see the faint echo of a sacred fire, a folk talisman, and a defiant gesture against the cold and fear of the coming winter. You will see the end of a story that began thousands of years ago, in a world of mist and magic, on a night when the walls between the worlds came tumbling down. The ancient origins of Halloween are not just a collection of historical facts. They are a story about us. They reveal our deepest, oldest relationship with the world, our fear of the dark, our love for our ancestors, our need for community, and our unquenchable desire to believe, if only for one night, that the world is more mysterious and magical than it seems. The spirit of Samhain is not dead. It is sleeping, dreaming, inside our modern Halloween. And every year, on October 31st, when we light the candle and the pumpkin, we are, whether we know it or not, helping to keep that ancient dream alive. As we look at the global spread of Halloween, we see a fascinating pattern. When the holiday arrives in a new culture, it often finds and connects with that culture's own native traditions of autumn and remembrance. In Latin America, the imagery of American Halloween now mingles with the deeply spiritual and vibrant traditions of Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. Skeletons and skulls, which were already central to that celebration, take on a new, playful context. The ancient human need to honor the dead finds new forms of expression, blending old ways with new imports in a colorful, living tapestry. This shows us that the themes of Samhain are not exclusive to the Celts. They are part of a universal human heritage. The end of the harvest, the coming of winter, and the remembrance of those who have passed are moments that every agricultural society has marked in some way. The story of Halloween is the story of one particular stream of tradition that, due to history and media, broke out of its original riverbed and flooded the world. It is so successful because it speaks a language of symbols that, on some deep level, all of humanity can understand. Let us also consider the colors of Halloween. Why black and orange? The reason is tied directly to the ancient festival. Orange represents the harvest, the color of the final autumn leaves, the pumpkins, and the flames of the sacred bonfire. It is the color of the dying warmth of the year. Black represents the opposite. It is the color of the encroaching darkness, the death of the sun, and the long, cold winter nights to come. These two colors, side by side, are a perfect visual representation of the festival's core theme, the meeting of light and dark, life and death. This duality is the very heart of the holiday's enduring appeal. It is not just a festival of darkness, it is a festival of light within the darkness. It acknowledges the fear and the sadness of the end of the year, but it does so with a defiant celebration. We light fires, we carve smiling faces, we have parties, we give gifts of sweets. It is a way of saying to the approaching winter, we see you, we respect your power, but we will not be defeated by you. We will keep our own light burning until the sun returns. This spirit of joyful defiance is perhaps the strongest thread that connects the modern holiday to its ancient ancestor. Imagine the ancient Celt, his face illuminated by the great bonfire. He is surrounded by the profound darkness of a world without electric light. He feels a genuine fear of the spirits that might be lurking just beyond the firelight. And yet, he is there, with his community, celebrating. He is finding joy and strength in the very face of the darkness. This is the same emotional core we find in the laughter of children running through a dark street on Halloween night. The holiday has also become a powerful source of personal and family tradition. For many people, their most vivid childhood memories are tied to Halloween. They remember the specific costume their parents made for them. They remember the thrill of walking down their street after dark for the first time. They remember the smell of roasting pumpkin seeds and the satisfying weight of a full bag of candy. These memories become a treasured part of a person's life story. The holiday is a machine for creating these powerful, formative moments of childhood wonder. Think of a parent helping their small child into a clumsy, oversized costume. The parent remembers their own childhood Halloweens, the excitement and the magic. They are now passing that magic on to the next generation. As they walk with their child from door to door, they are not just collecting candy. They are weaving a thread of connection between the past, the present, and the future. They are participating in a ritual that is far older than they know. A ritual of community, generosity, and the passing of light from one hand to the next. The very act of carving a pumpkin has become a cherished family ritual. It is a moment of creativity and collaboration. The family gathers around the kitchen table. They scoop out the insides, a messy but satisfying task. They debate what kind of face to carve, scary, happy, or silly. The moment the candle is lit inside for the first time is a moment of small magic. A simple vegetable has been transformed. It has been given a face, a personality, a soul. It is a temporary work of art that exists only to shine for one night. But there is also a quieter, more melancholic side to the modern holiday that connects to its roots. For those who have recently lost a loved one, Halloween can be a poignant time. The constant imagery of ghosts and skeletons can be a difficult reminder of their loss. It is a time of year that naturally leads to reflection on mortality. The thinning of the veil, in a metaphorical sense, can still be felt by anyone who is grieving. The ancient festival's role as a time to remember the dead has not been completely erased. It has just become more personal, more private. Consider a person who decides not to go to a party. Instead, they spend the evening looking through old photo albums, remembering a parent or a friend who has passed away. They might light a candle in their memory. In their own quiet way, they are observing the oldest tradition of Samhain. They are setting aside a time to honor their personal ancestors, to feel the connection between the living and the dead. This quiet, modern ritual of remembrance is just as much a part of Halloween's story as the noisy celebration in the streets. The holiday has always held a mirror up to society, reflecting its anxieties. In the past, the fears were of crop failure and evil spirits. In the mid-20th century, a brief panic about poison in Halloween candy reflected a growing fear of anonymous modern society. Today, debates about cultural appropriation in costumes reflect our current struggles with identity and respect. The holiday acts as a stage upon which we play out the dramas and worries of our own time. It continues to evolve, because we ourselves are always evolving. This adaptability is the secret to its survival. Halloween is not a rigid, unchanging set of rules. It is a fluid and open-ended invitation. It can be a religious festival, a children's holiday, an adult party, a commercial event, or a quiet night of remembrance. It can be whatever we need it to be. This flexibility is what has allowed it to survive the fall of the Celtic world, the rise of Christianity, the journey to a new continent, and the pressures of the modern age. It survives because it is constantly being reborn in the imagination of those who celebrate it. We have explored a vast and complex history, from the deepest past to the immediate present. We have seen how symbols can change their meaning, how rituals can be forgotten and reinvented, and how a sacred night can become a secular one. We have found the echoes of the old world hiding in the new. We have followed the ghost of Samhain on its long journey through time. The path has been illuminated. We now see the entire landscape of this ancient and modern festival. The promise made at the beginning of our story can now be fully kept. We began with a simple, stark contrast: the laughing child with their bag of candy, and the ancient belief in a festival of the dead. We promise to explain how one became the other. The answer is not a single event, but a long, slow river of change. The river's source was the Celtic festival of Samhain, a night of fire and fear, where the dead walked and the gods ruled the darkness. This was the world where the belief in a thinning veil was not a story, but the truth. The first great bend in the river was the arrival of Christianity. The church, unable to stop the current, chose to divert it. They built their own dams of All Saints, Day and All Souls, day around the festival, renaming it All Hallows Eve, and recasting its spirits as devils and demons. The deep, natural magic of the Otherworld was transformed into a simplistic battle between good and evil. The old gods were banished, but the old fears remained, now wearing new, more sinister masks. The festival was captured, but not killed. The river then flowed into the smaller streams of folk culture. Here, in the stories told by ordinary people, the Christian framework was blended with older pagan memories. This blend gave us the tale of Stingy Jack, a story that perfectly captures this mixed world. It is a Christian morality tale built on a pagan foundation of a soul trapped between worlds. And from this story, the first true Jack-o' lantern was born, a carved turnip, a folk magic ward against the wandering dead, a symbol of the holiday's new, hybrid identity. The next stage of the journey was a great leap across an ocean. Carried in the hearts of Irish and Scottish immigrants, the river of tradition flowed to the shores of America. Here, in a new land with new customs, the river began to spread out, losing its old, deep channel. It mingled with the waters of other cultures. The grim turnip was replaced by the friendly pumpkin. The serious act of souling was transformed into the playful ritual of trick-or-treating. The holiday's religious and spiritual intensity began to evaporate under the bright sun of American optimism. Finally, the river flowed into the vast, open sea of modern commercial culture. Here its waters were filtered through the engines of mass media and consumerism. The holiday was tamed, domesticated, and repackaged for a new audience, primarily children. Its remaining scary elements were turned into safe entertainment. Its communal traditions were turned into an opportunity to sell costumes, candy, and decorations. The ancient, terrifying river had become a wide, shallow, and sparkling sea of harmless fun, its original source almost completely forgotten. So when we see that child in their costume, we are seeing the end of this long river. Their costume is the final echo of the Samhain disguise. Their cry of trick or treat is the final echo of the Solar's prayer. Their plastic pumpkin full of candy is the final echo of the offering left for an ancestral ghost. And the smiling pumpkin on the porch is the final, friendly echo of a terrifying lantern carved to ward off a damned soul. The symbols have survived their long journey, but they have shed their old meanings along the way, like a snake shedding its skin. The fear that powered the original festival has not vanished. It has been transformed. The existential dread of the ancient Celt, facing the death of the sun, has become the delightful, momentary thrill of a child watching a scary movie. The terror has been turned into fun. The sacred has been turned into entertainment. This is the greatest transformation of all. The entire emotional landscape of the night has been reversed. What was once a night of staying inside, safe from the spirits, has become a night of going outside to meet them. We have kept our promise. The loop is now closed. We have explained the secret of Halloween. It is the story of a powerful idea that was too strong to die, but too strange to survive unchanged. To live, it had to adapt. It had to allow itself to be captured, renamed, and reborn. It had to cross an ocean and learn a new language. It had to forget its own sacred history to become a beloved part of the modern world. The history of Halloween is the ultimate story of survival through transformation. And yet, is the story truly over? Or is the wheel still turning? We have seen how, in recent times, people have begun to search for the holiday's lost soul. The revival of Samhain by modern pagans is a powerful sign that the story is not finished. It is a deliberate attempt to turn the river back towards its source, to rediscover the depth and meaning that was lost. This modern search for authenticity is a new chapter in the holiday's long and complex story. Perhaps the future of Halloween lies in this balance. It can be a night of innocent fun for children, a night of harmless revelry for adults, and a night of deep spiritual meaning for those who seek it. Maybe it does not have to be one thing. Its greatest strength has always been its ability to be many things to many people at once. It is a festival with many masks, and we are all free to choose the one that fits us best, whether it is the mask of a monster, a hero, or a quiet observer of the turning seasons. The world has changed in ways the ancient Celts could never have imagined. We have mapped the stars and decoded the building blocks of life. We live in a world of science and certainty. But we have not outgrown our need for mystery. We have not outgrown our need for magic. We have not outgrown our need to tell stories about the darkness. And Halloween is the last great festival of the irrational, the supernatural, the mysterious. It is the one night we allow ourselves to wonder, what if? What if the veil really is thin? What if the ghosts of our ancestors really are near? What if there is more to the world than what we can see with our own eyes? Halloween gives us permission to ask these questions. It allows us to step outside the well-lit room of our modern lives and to stand, just for a moment, in the darkness of the unknown. And in that darkness, we can feel a connection to something ancient, something primal, something that has been a part of the human story since the very first fire was lit against the night. The story of Halloween is ultimately a story about memory. It is about how a culture remembers and how it forgets. We have forgotten the names of the old gods. We have forgotten the precise meaning of the ancient rituals. But our bodies have not forgotten. Our traditions have not forgotten. The memory of Samhain is encoded in the DNA of our modern Halloween. It is present in the colors we use, the games we play, and the symbols we display. We are acting out a story that is far older than we are. This hidden history enriches our experience. It transforms a simple holiday into a profound cultural artifact. It turns a piece of candy into a symbol of a long chain of human connection, stretching back through time. To understand the origins of Halloween is to feel the weight of all the generations who have stood on this same threshold of the year, who have looked into the same darkness, and who have felt the same mixture of fear and hope. It is to realize that we are part of a much longer story. The next time you walk down a street on Halloween night, perhaps you will see it with new eyes. You will see not just a collection of houses, but a community of lights burning against the dark. You will see not just children in costumes, but the joyful inheritors of an ancient tradition of disguise and transformation. You will hear in their laughter the echo of a defiant celebration that has been ringing out against the autumn chill for more than 2,000 years. You will see the ghost of Samhain alive and well and smiling. The great wheel of the year continues to turn. The leaves will fall, the nights will grow long, and the cold will come. These are the eternal truths that gave birth to this festival in the first place. As long as the seasons turn, we will feel a need to mark this moment. We will feel a need to gather together, to light a fire, and to tell stories to keep the darkness at bay. The name of the festival may change again. Its customs may continue to evolve, but its spirit will endure. The journey we have taken together is a reminder that the past is never truly past. It is always with us, buried just beneath the surface of the present. It speaks to us in the language of symbols, in the whispers of tradition, and in the feelings that rise in us without our knowing why. The story of Halloween is one of the clearest examples of this living history. It is a ghost story in the truest sense. It is the story of how the spirit of a dead world continues to haunt our own. So the child in the costume and the ancient druid are not so far apart after all. Both stand at the edge of the darkness. Both are participants in a ritual designed to bring light, joy, and community to the darkest time of the year. One acts from a place of deep, sacred belief, and the other from a place of innocent, playful fun. But the impulse, the fundamental human act of creating a festival of light in the face of the dark, remains the same. The form has changed, but the heart has not. This exploration has been about more than just one holiday. It has been about the power of stories. It shows how the stories we tell ourselves shape our reality. The ancient Celts told a story of a cyclical world full of spirits, and so they lived in one. The medieval Christians told a story of saints and devils, and that became their world. We tell a story of consumerism and entertainment, and that is the Halloween we have created. But as we have seen, old stories never truly die. They just wait patiently to be told again. The knowledge of this history gives us a choice. We can continue to celebrate a Halloween that is simply a commercial event, a hollowed-out version of its former self. Or we can choose to reinvest it with meaning. We can choose to use it as a time to remember our own ancestors. We can use it as a time to reflect on the turning of the seasons and our connection to the natural world. We can use it as a time to strengthen the bonds of our community. We can, if we choose, relight the ancient fire. The power to do this lies in our own hands. It doesn't require us to become pagans or to give up the fun of trick-or-treating. It simply requires us to be mindful. It requires us to remember. When we tell our children the story of the jack-o'-lantern, we can tell them the whole story, the story of Stingy Jack and the lonely turnip. When we light the pumpkin, we can take a moment to think of it as our own small bonfire against the dark. We can choose to fill the old symbols with new, personal meaning. In doing so, we become active participants in the holiday's long history, not just passive consumers of it. We become the next link in the great chain that stretches back through the centuries. We become the storytellers, passing the tradition on to the next generation, enriched with our own understanding and our own reverence for the journey it has taken. This is how a tradition stays alive, not by remaining unchanged, but by being constantly rediscovered and reconsecrated in the hearts of the living. We began our journey with a single image, a smiling pumpkin on a modern doorstep. Our goal was to uncover its secret history, to understand the ancient world that gave it birth. We have now traveled that long road. We have seen how the sacred awe of Samhain, a night when the dead walked among the living, was slowly, piece by piece, transformed over 2 millennia. We have seen how fear became fun, how ritual became routine, and how belief became a party. The transformation is complete, and the evidence is all around us. The jack-o'-lantern is the ultimate symbol of this journey. Its ancestor was the fierce protective magic of the ancient Celtic world, filtered through the dark Christian folklore of a damned soul. It was an object of genuine fear and supernatural power. Today, it is an object of creativity and nostalgic charm. Its journey from a ward against evil to a welcoming beacon for trick-or-treaters perfectly mirrors the journey of the holiday itself. It has learned to smile. It has learned to put on a friendly face for a new and less threatening world. The costumes that fill our streets are the descendants of a sacred disguise, a way to become invisible to the powerful and dangerous spirits of the otherworld. Today, the purpose is the exact opposite. The goal is to be seen, to be noticed, to show off one's creativity and imagination. The magical act of becoming another being has been replaced by the social act of playing a part. But the core idea of transformation, of stepping outside one's ordinary self for a single night, remains a powerful and unbroken thread connecting our world to the ancient one. The candy we give and receive is the final, sweetest ghost of the offerings once left for the dead. The ancient Celts left food to honor and appease the spirits of their ancestors who returned on Samhain night. The medieval solars begged for cakes in exchange for prayers for the dead. We have kept the tradition of a food-based exchange at the threshold, but have forgotten its solemn purpose. The sacred meal shared with the dead has become a commercial transaction for mass-produced sweets. The communion has become a commodity. So the origins you never knew are these: that our brightest, most playful children's festival is born from one of the darkest and most serious nights of the ancient year, that every smiling ghost and silly witch costume is the faint echo of a genuine and profound belief in the supernatural, that the very foundations of this night are built not on fun, but on a deep and abiding fear of the darkness, the winter, and death itself. Halloween is a festival that is haunted by its own history. Understanding this does not spoil the fun. It gives it a new depth, a new resonance. It allows us to appreciate our modern Halloween not as a shallow commercial invention, but as the living, breathing result of an incredible story of cultural survival. It is a testament to the resilience of human tradition, a living museum where the ghosts of our ancestors still walk, even if they now wear the cheerful masks of our children. The ancient world is not gone. It is simply in disguise. The next time you see the familiar sights of Halloween, you will now be able to see what lies beneath. You will see the thinness of the veil. You will see the faint glow of the Druid's bonfire behind the streetlights. You will hear the echo of an ancient chant beneath the happy shouts of "trick or treat." You will know that you are taking part in the final scene of a story that began more than 2,000 years ago. A story of how humanity has always sought to find light, community, and joy in the face of the dark. The journey from Samhain to Halloween is not a story of loss, but a story of adaptation. The old beliefs did not simply vanish. They learned to speak a new language. They wrapped themselves in new customs and crossed oceans to find new homes. They allowed their terrifying face to be replaced with a smiling one, so that they could survive in a world that no longer had room for their sacred fears. It is the ultimate magic trick, the spirit of an ancient dead religion, hiding in plain sight in the heart of our modern secular world. The world will continue to change, and Halloween will continue to change with it. 100 years from now, its customs may be as different from ours as ours are from those of the ancient Celts. But the wheel will still turn, the nights will still grow long, and people will still feel the need to come together, to light a candle, and to tell stories against the dark. The deep human needs that gave birth to this festival are timeless. And so, in some form, the festival itself will be timeless too. Our journey is at its end. We have unraveled the mystery we set out to solve. We have followed the threads from the very beginning to the very end. We have seen how history, religion, and culture have woven together to create the strange and wonderful tapestry that is our modern Halloween. The smiling pumpkin on the doorstep is no longer a simple decoration. It is a history book, a symbol, and a testament to the long, strange, and magical journey of a festival through time. Look out your window on a late October evening. The sun sets earlier now. The air is crisp and carries the scent of dry leaves. A certain kind of quiet falls over the world. It is a time of transition, of letting go, a time when the vibrant life of summer finally surrenders to the long sleep of winter. This feeling is the source. This is where it all began. It is a feeling that connects us, across the centuries, to the first people who ever looked into a darkening sky and felt a shiver of both sadness and awe. This feeling is older than any religion, older than any myth. It is the simple, profound human response to the turning of the earth. The ancient Celts gave this feeling a name: Samhain. They built a powerful and beautiful set of rituals around it to help them navigate its mystery. We have inherited those rituals, though we have forgotten their names and their original purpose. But we have not forgotten the feeling. We feel it every year, in our bones. It is the ghost in the machine of our modern holiday. So when you celebrate Halloween, in whatever way you choose, know that you are part of something immense. You are not just a person in the 21st century having a party. You are a keeper of the fire. You are a storyteller. You are a link in an unbroken chain of humanity that has, for millennia, chosen to respond to the coming of the dark not with despair, but with a festival of light, imagination, and community. You are honoring the dead, even if you do not know their names. The greatest secret of Halloween is not its ancient origins, but its enduring power. Its power to create joy, its power to build community, its power to fire the imagination, and its power to remind us, just once a year, that the world is a far more mysterious and magical place than we usually allow ourselves to believe. It is a night when we remember that just beyond the edges of our well-lit world, there are shadows, and in those shadows, wonderful and terrible things might still exist. So light the candle, carve the pumpkin, put on the mask, and walk out into the beautiful, haunted darkness of the night. You are continuing a story that has no end. You are carrying a torch that was lit for you more than 2,000 years ago. And you are passing it on, a small, defiant flame of human warmth and wonder, into the long, dark, and quiet night of the year. The story is now yours to continue.